Joining us to discuss President Donald Trump's first year in office and the upending of rule-based global order, we have Ambassador Joe Keshi, who is a retired top career diplomat. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight. What a year. I mean, let's even take it from what the Canadian Prime Minister has said. Mark Carney, he says, is it the end of the world as we know it, the upending of rule-based global order? What's your own assessment of Trump's 1 year in office? What are the high points and the low points for you?
Well, not necessarily the end of the global order to start with. Yes, we do recognize the disruption, as the Canadian Prime Minister has said, but I also look back to the fact that about 8 years ago, in Trump's first term, he did, things similar to what he's doing now. The only fundamental or basic difference is the fact that in his first term, he had some adults in the room with him all the time. And the difference is that this time around, those adults have disappeared, and you have people that just kowtow to whatever Trump says and articulate it and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that we have to leave out this 4-year phenomenon of Trump and hope that America will regain some balance and some rationale at the end of Trump's first year. I mean, at the end of Trump's second-year tenure. Right. And I think that just like we saw when the Democratic leader took place, well, I also believe that even a more toned-down Trump, post-Trump, would probably restore some balance with the international, with the international order as it is today. But certainly, as what we have today is a complete disruption of what we used to have over the last couple of years.
Interesting. But can we then say, it might not be the end of the world, but is it the end of multilateralism? And because I ask that because we've seen tariffs and sanctions from the U.S., particularly to world bodies, as part of the U.S. foreign policy, or so it has come to stay. What are the consequences of those? No. And do they have any impact on the credibility of organizations such as the UN, the WHO, he has pulled out from, NATO, and the likes?
No, look, the fact that one man or one country has pulled out does not necessarily mean the end of the organization. When he pulled out the last time, the Chinese and a couple of other countries, for example, stepped up to fill in the gap in terms of financing the organization. And I believe that is going to happen this time because the world recognizes that we need a body like the world, like the World WHO, for example, or WTO, for example, or the United Nations. The irony of it is that when Trump was signing the Board of Peace, he was making the argument that the Board of Peace is supposed to work with the United Nations. So you can see the confusion in his mind. He's not even very sure whether the United Nations should be scrapped. Even when he made some, was it when he did when he was in the UN, he actually made some commitment to the United Nations. It's like, look, I know you don't like me, but look, we'll continue to work with it. At the General Assembly, exactly.
Yes.
So there's some confusion, and this is why I said we cannot do without this whole idea of, multilateralism. And today, the EU leaders are meeting. They are doing the same thing. So that is not going to disappear suddenly because one country or one organization, one country decided to pull out. I'm very confident that post-Trump, America will probably return to that order that it helped create. It might not be completely the same because the world will now be saying to themselves, can we trust the Americans? Are we sure that this is another 4 years of peace and stability? What happens when another Republican, or somebody, if Trump gives birth to some children, that we take over from him, it could also continue to be a little bit disastrous until, somebody else kicks them out.
And that's the concern, whether the damage really hasn't been done to the U.S., moral authority, global moral authority, the police of the world, the embodiment of democracy and all of that. Whether a fatal blow has not been dealt on the United States on that, especially look at the fixation with Greenland, for example. He calls it a piece of ice. Of course, there's a lot of pushback. But he's insisting it's either you give it to us, you know, easy peasy, or it's going to be the hard way.
No, look, you have to realize that Trump changed his mind about Greenland, for example, because of two reasons. Number one, the stock market in the UN collapsed or, you know, went into the negative lane when he announced that he was going to do it by force. And you'd also realize, I don't know whether if you watch it through CNN, as soon as he said, I'm not going to use force, CNN showed it on the screen. The stock market began to, you know, to rebound. The point I want to make is this, that around the world, leaders are trying to engage him to see whether they can slow him down, whether they can manage him. And for me, to some extent, it seemed to be working. Because the threat of the Europeans to also impose what they call a bazooka set of, you know, tariffs against, that would have been disastrous for the United States, because Europe is the largest trading partner of the United States. So somewhere along the line, I think where the leaders of the world are going to continue to manage him, to, you know, slow him down until he's done with his tenure.
Interesting. Ambassador, can we flip to the other side of the argument for those, the right-wing, the nationalists, who say Trump is a jolt that the world needed because they say, in his country first. We had the Minister of Trade for Nigeria granting an interview in Davos, and she did say Nigeria will protect itself first than any other person. So can you fault them when they say Trump was what the world needed? For everyone to begin to see themselves first. You protect what you have. And then how can we even learn from that? Should we even be learning from that, such as Nigeria?
I think, I'm not going to use that word Nigerian first. I think we've always made the point. Look, why is Trump disorganizing the global system and projecting this image of America first, America's greatness and things like that? My argument is very simple, that over the last couple of years, since the 1940s till today, we have more or less emboldened and encouraged America to become what it is today. It's like we created a monster.
Frankenstein.
In fact, thank you very much. And we have to deal with it.
Right.
Because look, for the last 45 years, I mean, more than 45 years, 70 years, any global crisis, we call on America, and America acts on behalf of the world. So, we have given America all the powers to do whatever it wants to do, and today we are dealing with the consequences of the rest of us not developing that capacity to protect the global system. And that goes to speak for us, not just in this country, but Africa. You will notice that in the conversation going on today about what the future will be like, the African voice is missing. The Nigerian voice is missing. Again, it happened a couple of decades ago, and again it's beginning to happen. And that's because we still do not have the capacity or the capability to genuinely and seriously engage the rest of the world.
The Ghanaian president, in his speech, sorry, just to butt in to emphasize the point you're making there, John Mahama asked a very, very important question. How should Africa be responding to this new world order?
You know, a couple of, when I served in Ethiopia, one of Professor Adediji, who was the Secretary General of the ECA, the UN Economic Community for Africa, Dr. Ladner. Dr. Ladner was a permanent secretary here from Sierra Leone, by the way, before he went to ECA. He used to ask a question at every meeting. He said, if another world war starts today, will Africa survive? Or will Africa not survive? In other words, we need to build up our capacity and capability to be ourselves and to do things for ourselves. And not think that we have to depend all the time on somebody else to help us, you know, even for us, as simple as it's taking care of displaced persons or people living in ID camps who are depending on. Now that has been cut off. All the aids, for example, that the American embassy used to give to agencies, students, and things like that, has been cut off by the new
administration.
Yes. So it means that we in this country and the rest of the continent and the rest of the world, and I think the Canadian Prime Minister made that point also.
Yes.
We need to learn to develop our capacity. When you have that capacity and you are not too dependent on one man for virtually everything,
you're resilient.
You are resilient. I mean, this would not be happening if we were doing this. And you could see that when the Europeans threatened to retaliate with their own collective sanctions, and the stock market went down, Trump had a change of mind. The only thing we don't know today is exactly what is the nature of the deal. But if you hear the the Denmark Greenland Prime Minister laying out the condition that they will accept any deal.
Okay.
I guess we'll have to leave it there. Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight.